You're listening to Big World Network.
Phineas Frakture and the Dolomite, Episode 10. Written by Joseph Gatch. Read by Michael Young. 20 years ago. Phineas? The young boy stopped working on his clock and looked up. Yes, father? What is it that you have there? My clock, sir, Phineas said reluctantly, as if he'd been caught stealing a piece of pie before dinner. Bring it here, his father ordered. Phineas carefully brought his clock over to his father. The other Frakture took the piece and turned it over, examining it. Where did you get this? I built it. From the piece room. I did not think that you would mind if I took some of the old pieces. His father inserted a key and wound the boy's creation. It immediately set its gears in motion, and fluidly kept time as he checked it against his pocket watch. I recognized the housing, but there was nothing in it, last I recall. You built the clockwork? Phineas nodded. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't... No need to apologize. This is marvelous work. How did you learn to do this? From watching you, father, Phineas said, as if the answer was obvious. Phineas's father took his watch fob from his waistcoat and handed it to Phineas, who looked at it in awe. It was his father's prized possession, and as far as he knew, his father never left it off his person. My father gave this to me when I was 10 years old, after I'd built my first clock. You are years beyond in talent than I was at your age. We call that a prodigy. It's a very special gift. Time, Phineas, is all important in this day and age. Everything runs on a schedule. Man, machine, whole cities. They all depend on the ticking of the gear, and they rely on the clockmaker to ensure that the gear is accurate. One bad gear is all it takes to throw off time. Find the gear that matters, and the rest falls into place. Perfection is what people want, and, from what I see here, you are already achieving it in your work. That watch is yours now, a symbol of the perfection we work towards. Remember to oil the gears and tighten the springs. This watch will serve you well, as it has me. Now. Time was running out. The Dolomite horde was approaching, and Phineas had no idea how to stop them. He looked over the massive generator and pulled a schematic from his coat. Come on, where are you? He muttered as he scanned the inner workings of the machine. He concentrated, blocking out the noise and urgency of the situation. Then his head snapped up, and he grabbed a wrench lying on a work table near the generator. Phineas set to work, opening the access panel and picking through the wiring until he found his target. He unhooked the lead and then cross-wired it with another. The generator suddenly stopped, and then started up again. This time the thrum became louder. He then took the wrench and shoved it into one of the massive gearboxes that supported the generator, aiming for one particular gear. The wrench caught between the teeth, causing the clockwork to groan and shudder. Phineas stepped back, admiring his work. That wasn't too hard, he said, as he watched the smoke begin to billow and the Tesla coil start to overload. It shouldn't take long to blow up now. He looked from the machine to the exit and the mass of Dolomite in between. Oh, crap. It shouldn't take long to blow up. Starting to panic, he began to run around looking for a way past the soldiers. Several pressurized tanks near the generators caught his eye. They were more than likely left over from the workers who had built the complex. He hoped that at least one was still full. Checking each, he found that most of them sounded empty. However, 2 still held their contents. Phineas knocked 2 legs off the work table and leaned it over diagonally on its side. He then propped the tank, nozzle side down, against it. This has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever done, he said as he straddled the tank. He grabbed another wrench and started banging on the nozzle until it broke off. The escaping pressure launched the tank and Phineas up and over the Dolomites, leaving a blazing arc as the charged atmosphere ignited the escaping contents. He looked down at the horde, which was already turning to follow his progress. Then the tank emptied. "Oh, this is gonna hurt." Phineas let go of the tank and hit the ground in a roll, about 50 feet from the Dolomite. He jumped up, hobbled for a bit, and began running as the Tesla arc started to go wild. As he ran past the tanks, he noticed the subjects inside thrashing about as electrical surges boiled the inhabitants. He felt remorse that he couldn't save more of them, but their current fate was probably better than the alternative. Almost home free, Phineas turned to see if his pursuers were within sight. Fortunately, there was no sign of them, which meant that they would not escape the cavern before the generator blew. He slowed down as he turned back to the entrance, and then remembered that there was no time to waste, and started to run again, right into a dolomite with a red star stamped on its chest plate. Right into a dolomite stamped with a red star on his chest plate. Phineas slammed into the behemoth and fell flat on his backside. He stared up at the dolomite, as the dolomite stared down at him. Time seemed to stand still, as the two sized each other up, one wondering how to get past the other, while the other judging if the one would make a good addition to the army. The dolomite began reaching for his butcher's hook, and then stopped. Instead, he reached forward. Phineas, frozen with fear at the sight before him, finally experiencing what his father must have felt all those years ago, could do nothing. But instead of grabbing Phineas, the dolomite took hold of his watch and pulled it close to his faceplate. Phineas watched in confusion as the dolomite looked from the watch to him and back again. Finn. A deep rumbling facsimile of what sounded like his name emanated from the beast. As far as Phineas knew, this was the first time a dolomite had actually been heard to speak. The dolomite held out the watch to Phineas, who, still dumbfounded, stood up and took it. After a moment, realization set in. All fear aside, Phineas stepped close to the dolomite's faceplate and looked in. "Father?" Phineas said quietly. He put his hand on the helmet, and the dolomite raised his own hand to touch Phineas's arm. "Go," Prime rumbled. Phineas, feeling a sudden peace inside of him, moved past his father and headed up the stairway. The last he saw of the dolomite called Prime, it was moving back into the cavern to accept its fate. As Phineas reached the top of the stairs, a great explosion sounded behind him. The cavern shook and rocks began to fall. Phineas looked back in awe as a huge fireball exited down below and began making its way up towards him. He ran into the passageway that led back to the sewers and didn't look back. The hidden entrance was directly ahead, and he slammed his shoulder into the wall, hoping it would open. It didn't. Phineas once again felt his heart jump into his throat. "This is not happening," he said as he leaned up against the wall, looking at the approaching firestorm. Without a sound, the door swung open, and he fell through. He got up and slammed the door shut just as the fireball reached it. The pressure was immense, and threw the door open again, sending Phineas flying out of the room and into the sewer. "Explain to me again why you two are raving like lunatics, and why you are dressed like a man just caught you climbing out her window." "Constable," said Abigail, "please listen. We just came from underground. We found the lair of the Dolomite, and rescued William here from them. They may be coming after us. You have to get a force together to stop them." The constable looked at them like they were mad. "Even if I did believe you, nothing can stop them, and I'm certainly not going to try." "But our friend is still down there. He needs help. We can't just leave him," exclaimed Abigail, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "Lass, you know as well as I do that nothing short of all the bombs in the Emperor's arsenal could stop those things. I'm afraid your friend is lost. I'm sorry. Now, you need to get moving along and have your friend here cleaned up." The ground below them began to shake, and there was a deep rumbling from within. "What in the blazes is that?" asked the constable. "Sounds like a lot of bombs," said William. "It sounds like Phineas," added Abigail.
You're listening to Big World Network.